Hey guys, this is Hunter Levine, and thanks for checking out the Captain's Collective podcast. Brought to you by Skinny Water Culture, Turtle Box Audio, My Captain, Yeti Coolers, Florida Fishing Products, and the Drifter Fish Club. We're releasing 2 podcasts today. This episode features an interview with Cecil Leathan, who's a co-founder at East End Lodge in Grand Bahamas. The second episode is a Drifter Roundtable, where members of Drifter Fish Club have a conversation and reflect back at their week in the Bahamas, so make sure to check out that podcast too. In this conversation, Cecil shares the story of how East End Lodge came to be and what it's been like building something in a tight-knit community. He also reflects back on Hurricane Dorian that had a massive impact on Grand Bahama. I've always loved sitting down with seasoned guides, and Cecil has over 26 years experience in these waters. He's warm, easy to talk to, and has a deep perspective on what it looks like to love a fishery and love a place. Outside of being completely devoured by mosquitoes, this was a really enjoyable conversation, and I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you guys like this podcast, please help us out by subscribing and sharing. If you're interested in learning more about the Drifter Fish Club, head to www.drifterfishclub.com. We hope that you guys enjoyed. Thanks for listening. This is the Captain's Collective. Hey, Cecil, thanks so much for hopping on the podcast. I know that you guys have a lot of things that you do on the day-to-day here at East End, and we're just so grateful for you accommodating Drifter Fish Club, and our crew has had such an amazing time here in Grand Bahama, just getting to see your beautiful section of the ocean and all the things that you guys have to offer here. So thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time tonight. How long have you lived here at Grand Bahama?
Well, I live here all my life. I live here on Grand Bahama, the eastern of the island. But first of all, I'd just like to, thank you, just for, us just sitting down here tonight, and just doing a little podcast, on the bone fishing. For me, I grew up here all my life, work at Deepwater Key for 13 years, which in Deepwater Key, if you're not familiar, Deepwater Key is only about 2 miles away from East End Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And East End to Deepwater Key is where I met Robert, and that's the way how everything was born to East End Lodge, just me and Robert out in the boat, having a good time out in the boat, and, just put the question out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, you know what? I think we should, just establish our own lodge, and that's the way how everything really gets started right there.
Now, as a kid growing up here, was being a bone fishing guide or working in a fishing lodge something you always wanted to do? What was it like being a child here?
Yeah, I always wanted, to be, I wouldn't say I always wanted to be a bone fishing guide. My mom, she asked me, says, Cecil, why don't you try out, to be a bone fishing guide? Which, it was only 2 jobs here on the eastern of the island, which was bone fishing or going in the boat lobster fishing.
Mm-hmm.
So I say, you know what? I don't know if I want to do a bone fishing, but I'll give it a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So one day, I saw the guides, them pulling, in the front of the town. And, I saw them casting, and I saw them catch a fish. And it looked like it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The way how they cast the rod, and I saw them get the, caught the fish. But the one thing what I really didn't understand, that you wouldn't be casting the fly rod. Your job is going to be to pull the boat.
Yeah.
So that was fun, And for me, like I tell a lot of folks, with bone fishing, the exciting part for me is like seeing someone come down here for the first time and see them, just go out and catch a bonefish, and the joy, the excitement, what it brings to that person.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I think that's what caused me to get up every morning and want to do this.
Did you get a chance to fish a lot as a kid? Was that something that you had an opportunity to do, or was that something that you got into a little bit later in life?
Well, I had the opportunity to do a lot of fishing, but I wouldn't say bone fishing, because my dad was always a fisherman. But, we would do it the old school way.
Mm-hmm.
You get the line and you toss it out with your hand and you pull it back. It's not with fly rod, spin rod. No, that come way after, because I was, just started out, I'll say about 22 years ago. Yeah. I really.
That's when you got
Yeah,
into it.
no, sorry, but I 32 years, 32 years.
32.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, do it.
And so tell me about, as a kid who grows up doing handline fishing, and there's guides obviously running around at the time who are starting to fly fish. What did it look like for you to kind of enter into that? Because a lot of people, they might see something and think, wow, that looks like a cool job. That looks like something I'd be interested in getting into. But then it takes a little bit of work to actually go from, okay, I don't want to be a lobster guy. I want to go be a bonefish guide. What did your path look like into that?
Well, when I first started out into bone fishing, and just to get into it, for me, it was like when I started out the bone fishing part of it, it was really, I was thinking it's gonna be easy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but then like I tell you, for bone fishing, I think it's only a few guides who really, who could pass this test to become a guide.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's look like fun, to doing it, but just going out there sighting the fish, because most folks, they try to sight the fish and they can't, and just seeing the fish and be able to, talk someone into casting to that fish
Mm-hmm.
and catch that fish. It's much harder than you think it, and a lot of folks think it is to do it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think makes a great bone fishing guide, if you had to break it down?
Well, I'll say you got to have good eyesight,
Mm-hmm.
patience, patience. Because if you don't have it, you can't make it to become a good guide. And I think there's some of the keys. You have a good eyesight, and you learn with bone fishing. How to read the bottom with a bonefish, because with my experience, when you hit the flats, you're able to see, like, where a bonefish feed. And then you will know that, oh, this is the way I got to track this. Because, you'll be going down, you see where the bonefish feed. Then, you go for 4 or 5 minutes in, there's no feed.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to know how to track the bonefish down in order to really to become a good guide, to find that bonefish and talk someone into catching that fish.
What do you feel like as a kid who grew up, obviously you grew up around the water, you grew up on the water, but when you began to learn about bone fishing, what was most helpful for you? Were there mentors? Were there certain things that you feel like helped you kind of get your bearings in that style of fishing?
Well, I'll say one of the guides that I always have that respect for, and that was Walter. Always have the respect for him, because I know when I first started out to Deepwater Key, it was hard for me, because I tried to go out there. I had a week training, 1 week of training before I had to take, clients out in the boat. So it was tough. Many days I come in, and I'll give you just a little joke, and I mean, it's a true story. So, I first get started at Deepwater Key, and Deepwater Key had the little, we call it, they used to put your name on the tag for your little lunch, and it's called, what's it called? I'll say a little term is, we're taking out your lemonade. We're taking out your lemonade. So my name was on it. I only had a week of training. So I say, yeah, my name is on this, so this is for Cecil.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't know, my name was only on it, so I know what to take out in the boat. So my first week out in the boat, I drank the gas lemonade the first day. so I mean, for me, it, on my first trip, but Walter, he says, Cecil, hold on. Yeah, this is only here for you to know what to take in the boat. So it's like he was my mentor, like going in the boat, and he says, Cecil, you could just go over here, take your time, and this how you wake the flat. Pull the flat slowly. Don't rush from flat to flat. Take your time, pull the flat, and, you should find some bonefish over here. So that's like most folks ask me when they come here. I always have that respect for him.
Mm-hmm.
But like I always, and now Walter, he work here for, to Eastern Lodge. And I always said to Walter, I want you keep your foot. We used to say in the Bahamas, keep your foot in the tank. Because the student trying to become the teacher. And I'm trying to put you down. I'm trying to push to take this crown away from you.
Yeah.
So keep working hard, you
Yeah.
know. So we just joke around with that, you know, just about every morning in the boat. So, and I know if you have a conversation with him, he'll always say, "That's my student," because he know I push hard to putting it to taking it away from him.
Yeah, we fished with I fished with Walter today, which was a lot of fun, you know, really knowledgeable guy. He's really good at giving instruction also, which I always really appreciate. There's always something to be working on. Like every presentation, every cast, you know, he gives just a little bit of guidance that helps me better understand the situation. And I could tell he's a great mentor. And one of the things that we were talking with Walter with today, this morning, is something that I've heard from several guides across the Bahamas, that you know, there's a concern that there is maybe not enough people who are growing up wanting to become bone fishing guides, the future of bone fishing guides. And a lot of the places that I fish, the sentiment that guides have is that there's too many people wanting to guide. And it's not been my experience with talking to Bahamian guides. But for you, when you look at the next generation of guides and you guys are trying to invest in them and raise them up, what do you feel like are the most important things from Walter's generation that needs to be passed on to the next generation of guides?
Well, I think with the guidance situation, I think we need to take it more to the schools.
Mm.
You know, I think if we take it to a lot of the schools, I think, you know, and teach it in, you know, a lot of it in the classrooms. And I think if, you know, and just and teach the kids them, you know, because, you know, a lot of kids, you get in, they say, well, you know, it's a lot of fun just doing it.
Mm.
But, and like even right now, you know, so we have like 4 guides, 4 trainees who want to do it, you know. And like I was telling them, you know, if we could get but 2 of them out the 4, then I think that's awesome. That's awesome. Because, like I tell you, only a few folks who will make it to become a guide, you know. So and I think if we take it to the schools or in our classes on bone fishing, I think it will help, you know, this industry tremendously. I think if we do something like that.
When you think back to being a kid, do you remember your first bonefish that you caught?
Oh, I don't think I would ever forget that first one,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Because, you know, after my client, you know, it's like, you know, they have to say, Cecil, I think you need to just calm down a bit now. Calm down a bit. Because I was so excited when I get my first bonefish, you know, because, you know, and I can remember the spot up Eastern, you know, on those flats. And, you know, I supposed to be giving the guests the bonefish, you know, take a photo. I want to get in there and take a photo because, you know, I'm so excited, you know, to get back just to the managers and to the guys just to let them know I've caught the first one.
Yeah.
You know, and like I tell you, from there on in, everything was almost history, like we say here, you know, in the Bahamas, you know, and from there, I was game from there.
To you, what was, you know, when people go from, oh, I think I want to do this. I used to work with college students, and all the time they would think they want to do something, study, work to get there, and then they would get into the job, and then they would realize, oh, wow, this isn't necessarily what I wanted to do. I thought the idea of it, or I thought that I would want to do it. But then for some people, there's just certain things where it's like, I think I want to do it. They get into it and something just clicks and they just fall in love with it. For you, what was that thing that just clicked for you when you became a guide? Like, what did you find yourself just being drawn to the most excited about? What was that for you?
I think I'll say, like I told you, when I first started, you know, and I did it for a few days and I didn't get the first bonefish, I feel like this really ain't for me. But like I tell you, after I caught that first bonefish, I mean, I think that's some of the exciting I think I really was after that first bonefish. You know, because even when I could remember good, you know, even when I get back home to my mom and let her know, this is what I want to do. This is really what I want to do, you know. And from that day, you know, all I wanted to do was bonefish. And like I tell them, every morning I wake up, it's like, no, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. You know, because a lot of times, even when I show up here, most folks say, Cecil, you know, before I leave my house, which in the lodge is about, you know, a mile away from my house. And most folks say, Cecil, I can hear you before you leave your house. Because I tell them I'm excited. I'm excited every time, and so you can see every time I come in, I'm always excited in the morning, and the evening. I'm excited always to go because I love to catch bonefish. You know, even for myself. But like and I can't repeat it enough time. For me, the excitement that I bring to some other fisherman life, how excited they get, when they're doing it. And it's nothing to me. It's like when I have that person for the first time and they caught their first bonefish. Even before they get the fish in, when they hook up with that fish, it's like, yes, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the exciting for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, when they do something day in and day out, people are coming here to East End Lodge and people are planning for months, years. Some people have been wanting to come here for years and years and years. And when you work at a place where, you wake up every day and you come and, you can easily fall into the rhythm of not seeing their perspective. But for you feel like even today, 30 years later, you can still feel that excitement of what it means to come somewhere for the first time or catch that first fish.
Like I don't think I would ever, with that feeling, with that first fish. And I gotta just give you just a little, I'll say about a few months ago, when my wife, we had a trip and we went to New York. And, when we touched down, and just, we used to seeing everything just
flat.
Flat. And all of a sudden, it's like everything is, you got to be looking up for everything. And we have never seen anything like that. So I understand when someone come down here, so they're not used to going out 50, 60 feet of water and the water's still clear. You still can see the bottom, because when I used to work to Deepwater Key, they gave me a trip and I went to Georgia and we went out doing a little tarpon fishing. You put your hand in the water and you can't see. You can't see your hand. So I know exactly when they come down here, when they see the crystal clear water, what they're talking about, So I know exactly what it is, when they say it's so beautiful, like you could talk to maybe a few of the guys and they really don't understand because they, a few of them never had that experience.
Yeah.
Travel to see those places. So I know exactly, what it is, what they're talking about.
Yeah, what it's like to go somewhere and be new to it. And there's excitement and there's also sometimes, a nervousness about being somewhere new or, I know for a lot of people who are fishing, they're worried about blowing the shot. They're worried about not seeing the fish. How do you try to help people who maybe are a little bit more anxious when they get on the boat?
Well, most sometimes, like even before I take off and I go in the boat, I always try to talk to my clients and I tell them, listen, first of all, you here to have fun. Let's have some fun whilst we do this. If you see a bonefish coming, if you cast a bonefish and you blew it, don't even worry about it because you can have quite a few more shots. Because some folks, and then sometimes they stand on the bow, and as a guide, you almost got to be like, if it's the right, like a therapist. It's like I need to try to get them to. How do I get them to calm down? Settle down. And just think about the cast. And like I tell them, it's like, don't worry with the fish. All I want you to do is just listen to what I'm saying. I'll instruct you and I'll talk you right through it, in order for you to catch the fish. But first of all, I need you just to be, just take your time, just relax your cast. Because most folks, they get excited, and they start moving a bit, casting the rod a little quick, But I know it's hard, to get someone to really settle down and cast it. So that's really tough to do that.
Yeah, sometimes that just takes time. You can't hand somebody all that experience, but I know that a lot of people that I've traveled with too that are newer really appreciate when the guide is, focused on them just having a good time, focused on them learning and, not feeling like insecure about, oh, I'm sorry, did I disappoint you? Did I mess that up? Like, are you mad at me? Like I've noticed with a lot of the guides, especially Bahamian guides, there's a lot of friendliness and joking and they might get on you a little bit, but you always feel like a friend, which I think is a really great part of the culture here.
Yeah. I mean, because most of the guys, they're friendly. I mean, all of them I consider them as friendly. And for me, it's like I always tell like my clients in the boat. I say one thing with it, even if you mess up, you don't worry about it. One thing I'm asking you, you got to have. I want you to have the patience for me to find the fish. I got to have the patience for you to catch the fish, or to put the fly to the fish, So there's no way, because if I go and not you, it's like, man, no, you know. And I always consider, I'll say, my clients.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, without you, there's no me.
Mm-hmm.
That's first of all. So, and for me, that register with me. So I don't, I try not to put that pressure on my clients, on my, yes, whoever come,
Mm-hmm.
because I want them to have a good experience that when they leave from here, they go with a good,
Mm-hmm.
they go with a good, just to say Eastern Lodge, it's a place. And I try to get that in most of all of my guides,
Mm-hmm.
and I get them to understand. Always remember, I want you to be nice. Because I have a guy there, and that guy that's really mean to a client, no, we don't need you here.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, without you, I say, there's no me, or there's no guide, or there's no Eastern Lodge.
What were some of the biggest challenges in starting a lodge? Because making a jump from a guide to somebody who's, running a fishing lodge that's a big jump that probably a lot of people, it's a jump to go from not guiding to guiding. It's a jump to go from guiding to helping run an organization. What did that look like for you? How did all that transpire?
First of all, I learned a lot. I learned most of it from Deepwater Key.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned what not to do
Mm-hmm.
to Deepwater Key. Because I tell you, went to Deepwater Key, with most of the clients, I sit back and I listen when, we have a conversation and they come in the evening, and management, wouldn't even, it's like, don't even consider that, they are there, So I want to know if you go in the boat, I want to know how was your day. We could talk, just a bit about it. How was the day? And if it's something you want to have someone that you'll be able to talk to
Mm-hmm.
after when you get out of, after a hard day of fishing, you want to have someone to talk to if it depends on how your day was out there, out in the boat, And then, like I was telling him, even with my wife, Sharice's like, both of us work over there to Deepwater Key. And I tell you, we take all the bad, and what we learn a lot from Deepwater Key, So, and like I tell them, I appreciate even working at Deepwater Key.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, working at Deepwater Key, it always registered to me that, man, I love to own a fishing lodge or be a part owner of a fishing lodge because I know exactly, I listen to what most of the guests that I fish, what they likes and they dislikes. And that's very important for someone, when they're coming down here. Very important.
One of the things I like to ask people who have lived in a fishery their whole life is, you have a lifetime of memories. It's like a book in your head of all your favorite days and most meaningful moments. What are a few of those for you when you think about meaningful moments that you've had on the water? Are there any that stick out?
Meaningful. When you say meaningful, it's like you're talking about what happened in the boat, or
yeah, like certain days on the water that just stick out to you in your mind. Certain people that have caught fish or experiences for you or things that you've seen.
yeah. Like just like with me going in the boat, and sometime, because I had one of my good friends, and he wanted to get a permit so bad, and we went out in the boat, and just taking him up to Eastern, and he say, see, he tried to get a permit, so he went out, and for the first time he caught a permit, which I don't think I would ever forget it. And then it's him and his buddy step up, and his buddy say, "Man, it's my time to get one now." And his buddy, he stand to get a permit, to catch a permit, and he stand about for 45 minutes. We saw about 7 or 8 permit, make a cast of them, And his buddy stepped back and say, "Man, let me get some water. Hold the rod for me." And his friend, his friend, he stepped right back up. Second permit come, two in the same day, and then it's like, and just like I had even one of my friends, out in the boat, things on that way I don't think I would ever forget. We cast a bonefish, hook up on the bonefish, and his drag was pretty loose. So I said, tighten the drag. He opened his hand to tighten the drag, and the rod went out of his hand. And I said, man, let's don't chase after the rod. We chase after the rod, and the rod went down in about a 30 feet deep channel. So we stayed there about for 45 minutes circling around. And after 45 minutes, he said, don't worry about it. Let's go. Don't worry about the rod and reel. And he just purchased the reel that morning right into the lodge.
Mm.
And just when he said, let's go, don't even worry about it. But a minute later, I see a bonefish coming on the top of the surface, and that there was the fly in his mouth, pulling the rod right behind him.
Yeah.
So all those things is really exciting. That I don't think I would ever forget a lot of those stories, and I could sit there almost all evening and one after the other just tell you about things what happened in the boat. Exciting, really moments I had out in the boat.
And then I know that you guys have rebuilt since Dorian. I was just curious what that process has looked like, post-hurricane.
You mean with rebuilding the large back?
Yeah. Just, working through that, because when you drive around here, you can see a lot of the, saltwater intrusion and damage. I know that was a big challenge for the community. I was just curious what that process has looked like moving forward.
Yeah, well, that process, I'd say the both of us, but, myself and Robert, because Robert, he was in the States, he did a lot, to helping the community back in, because, we had the guy with us, it take us, I'll say about, pretty close 2 years, to get everything, get everything back up and going, here to the lodge, but, would make it so much easier for the Eastern Lodge, because, we just having the plants and taking it to the States and having built everything over there and just ship it in the trailer, the whole, all the buildings, because here the process here was really slow. You really couldn't really find anything in those 7 days. So we, living in Freeport on the drive, going and coming, because that's the way, because we had no power here for almost 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so, just going and coming every day.
Wow.
Which, I went to Freeport and just say, well, I just want to stay there just for a day, let the storm pass by. And I was down in Freeport pretty close 2 years.
Wow.
So that was a long, drawn-out process in order to get everything back, because then you got to manage all the guides, them here when they, doing all the buildings and all that stuff. So I give a lot of credit to him, for back in the States, and even for myself for every day, trying to manage the guides them here to the lodge.
Did you feel like working through that season taught you anything or changed anything about you?
Dorian?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I tell you, that put me, to a place where in my whole life, like, it just changed, and I'll tell you, when I say change, it's like, I talk to even a lot of the guides, and I tell them, we need to prepare ourselves for much better for whenever a disaster hit, so we would be more ready for it, whenever it comes, because right at that time, like I tell you, like, and I'll just say, like, for you guys, as Robert had a GoFundMe. And that's what take us through, because without that, I really don't know how we would make it, because we really couldn't find anything here as simple as water. So every week, Robert, charter plane, they come in here with the water, and U.S. Coast, and the Coast Guard had their big, ship right out here, would bring us water in those stuff, like every day, because I don't think we really would make it here. And then everyone here, no house was here, was livable. My house had like 9 feet of water in there.
Wow.
Yeah. So to stay up here, everyone was living like in tents, So there was no house was livable here or no power here in this town.
Do you feel like that gave you a greater appreciation for the accommodations that you have? Well, I mean, I feel like anybody who's gone through something like that where you're living in tents and worried about your water each day, I mean, that has to leave an impression on you.
Oh, it does. It does. It leave a, like I tell them, the impression, like I said, for me, it's like I was, really concerned myself, but it's the folks here in the town who I was more concerned about, They're the folks because I have a lot of friends, back in the States that, they open up their homes, to me and my family. My family, they went over there for about 3 months just living out there and, in the States, so, and then I was going every week and going and coming back. But I was, for the folks who was here, they was the folks that I really was concerned about. That's the reason. I tell my wife, I say, you could go, but I gonna stay here, for my people, because I wanna make sure that they's taken care of, here in the town, So it was tough. Like I tell you, I've never experienced anything like that in my life, And I just tell them, most of the folks in the town, I tell them, you never know when it's gonna happen again, so. Be prepared. Get prepared, because, this hurricane is really bad,
My last question, and wrapping up here too. This is the most mosquito bites I've ever gotten in dinner. I'm like human braille right now. And yeah, it's a little mosquito-y right now. But the last question before we wrap up is, a lot of people have this bucket list to go catch bonefish. A lot of people want to catch big bonefish, which this area is known for. And they're on the fence and they're trying to decide, is it worth the money? Is it worth the time? What would you say to somebody who's wanting to catch bonefish? What's the big draw? What do you feel like is the big kind of umph behind the whole pursuit of bonefish?
Oh, but you mean if you would just want to come here, just the eastern? I mean, if you want to come down just to catch
yeah, what's the hype with catching bonefish? Because there's a lot of people who say they want to do it and they're kind of on the fence. What would you say to get somebody off the fence just chasing bonefish at East End or anywhere that bonefish are?
Well, I'll tell you this here right now. Here, the Eastern Lodge. You come to Eastern Lodge and you don't get a bonefish. This Cecil sitting here, guarantee you your money back if you don't get a bonefish. I guarantee you, if you come here, if bonefish is your bucket list, you're going to get a bonefish. If you show up here to Eastern Lodge, I guarantee you, you're going to get a bonefish before the trip is ended.
What do you feel like is so special about them as somebody who's spent your life in these waters? What's the draw?
I think the pull. Yeah, the pull of a bonefish. Because, a lot of folks, they do a lot of fishing, right? And then, they always go and catch trout. Trout, just they hand line it almost, just strip it almost back there. A lot of them right back in. Bonefish, it ain't happening. Sometimes you have a bonefish if it's 1 pound or 2 pounds. And when you get and you say, man, I was really was thinking he was much larger than that.
Yeah.
It's just the pull of a bonefish, the fight. And just to hear that reel making that sound, I think that's the thrill, with bonefish. I think that's what it is.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for hanging out and sharing just a little bit of your stories. We've loved our time here at East End. We got one more day tomorrow, so we're excited about that. And I really appreciate everything that you and your wife and Robert have done for us. So thank you.
Pleasure for me to do it. And looking forward for tomorrow, catching some bonefish again.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Captain's Collective. If you're enjoying this podcast, help us out by sharing or subscribing. Also, if you're interested in learning more behind the scenes or seeing some of the writing from the road that I have, as I do Drifter Fish Club and Captain's Collective, go check out my Substack and just search Hunter Levine. Thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoy. This is the Captain's Collective.